Hi, what's up? Orb here. I'm just going to teach you guys how to use something called the wire mod in Gmod. This is an extremely useful plugin that I really love because, I started playing Gmod and I thought it was a really great game, but it seemed like it had some kind of limitations, and this just really opened up all the possibilities to me. So it really allows you to create some kind of really cool electronics and things. So I'm just going to show you how to use this through a number of tutorials. So the basics we're going to start out is that first off, you have to make sure you have the wire plugin installed. And then when you hold Q and go to Gary's mod, you should go down and you should start seeing that there are a lot more controls. You have, wire control, wire beacon, wire detection, wire display, wire input output, wire physics, and the basic wire tools. So we're just going to start out, and I'm going to teach you some extreme basics here. So the first thing we're going to learn about is the wire button. Now this is just like an ordinary button that you have up here under construction, except that instead of using a key, instead of when you press the button it emulates a key, it actually instead sends out a message through wires to other things like buttons. So if we create a button, we've got a number of things we're going to talk about here. We're always going to ignore presets. That just allows you to create some kind of a preset so that you can have a button that does something and always be able to have that there selectable. So the first thing is button model. Now this isn't very important, but it can be really nice for organizing things. So for example, if you have a type of, let's say you have something that's like counting down a timer or something, or some kind of sequence, you could have like a stop button to stop it, start button, reset the timer. You can have like numbers. So then there's like words like arm for arming like a weapon. You've got minus and plus. We're just going to use let's just use plus for now. And the next thing you have is toggle. Now this is very important because with some things you just want to have it so you have to hold down the E button, the use button on the button whenever you want to use it. So like moving in a ship, if you want to move the ship with the button, you want to have to hold it down. But with other things, you'd want to have it toggled. So I'm going to turn on toggle for now, and then the next things we're going to have is value on and value off. I'm going to talk about value off first. Value off is basically talking about what number is this button sending through wires when it's not being pressed. So everything has to do with sending values, like numbers, through wires to other things. So this button might be sending to a thruster to tell a ship to move forwards, just tell the ship to move forwards. So we'd have the value off at 0 because we don't want it moving, and 0 times the speed would be, it's just 0. Or we could have the value on at 1 to tell the thruster to turn on. So that way, when you press the button, it's sending a value of 1 through any wires. So we're just going to create this on a plane right now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to want to go into props. It's really hard to see. I've lowered my resolution down to 640 for you guys. But what we're going to use for most of our props is Phoenix mod. It's an extremely useful mod. So we're just going to get ourselves a little metal plate here to put our stuff on. So I'm just going to freeze that right there. And we're going to click on our button tool. I'm just going to create a button here. Alright, so now if I hold my mouse over it, you see 0-1 equals 0. So that's basically just telling you that you've got a off value of 0 and an on value of 1, and right now it equals 0. So if I were to press E on it to use it, you'll see it says 1. The current value is 1 because I'm using it. And then I can let go and it's still on 1 because we enabled toggle. So if I were to press it again, it would go down to 0. Alright, so now what we would want to do is wire it up to something else. So let's just create something very simple, like a thruster. Let's just go over the very basic attributes of this. It's just like if you've ever used a thruster under construction, construction here. It's just going to push something. So model is not important, just use Colacan because it's very small. Over water effects, this just changes whether it's in water. We don't have any water in this map, it's not a big deal. Force multiplier just has to do with how hard it pushes it. That's important for how fast you want something to go. Force minimum, just leave it 0. Force maximum, just leave it at whatever it is at. Bidirectional has to do with whether it can move backwards and forwards. That's only in wire mod. That isn't actually in the original. You don't have to worry about that for now since we're not dealing with that. Collision you shouldn't have to worry about. It's just going to collide with this object. Enable sound, just turn that off. It's annoying. Works out of water. Make sure that's checked so it'll work when it's not out of water. And let's just place this on this model here, and you'll see that its thrust is 0. So what we could do is we could take our wire tool here, which basically just takes values from one object and connects the value into something else. So basically, let's look at our wire options here. They're all pretty basic. I mean, width I like to lower down to 0.5. It starts at a default of 2, just to make things thinner and a lot cleaner when you're dealing with lots and lots of wires. Rigid has to do with the fact that whether it'll bend or stretch. You shouldn't have to worry about that for this lesson. Make sure breakable isn't checked. Wouldn't want that to happen. And material doesn't really matter. Black is fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook up this can's thrust to the value of this button. So when you hover over, you see A is the value that we're connecting. Sometimes objects have multiple values that you connect. A, B, thrust, things like that. But this one only has thrust, so A is it. If you wanted to change which one you were connecting, you could right-click on the object. But when I do that, you'll notice that it stays on A because that's all you can connect to a thruster. So just left-click on the object, and then left-click on the button, and you'll see a wire is created. And you'll see that A is now turned red because it has a wire in that spot, and the wire corresponding to that value is blinking. Alright, so now if we hold our mouse over the button, it's at 0, our thrust is at 0. If I press E and turn it on, our thrust is at 1. The button value is at 1. Our thrust is at 10,000 because our thrust multiplier was 10,000 when we created the thruster. Our force multiplier was 10,000. So now we are creating a thrust of 10,000 off this can. Our object happens to be frozen, but if I were to unfreeze it, it would go flying. So I'm just going to unfreeze it, and you'll see it's flying all over the place. I can just freeze it in place, turn off the button to 0, and you'll notice it no longer has any force applied to it. So that's the first lesson on the wire mod. I hope this is really helpful to you on the basics of this wonderful mod.